Let's look back at some of the important points we learned today. We explained what oxygen deficiency is and where it is most likely to occur. Next, you understood that the risk of being affected is very high, as well as the countermeasures and prevention. Finally, actual cases of accidents were explained and emergency response procedures were explained. Those who wish to learn more about oxygen deficiency diseases should take advantage of the safety and health workshops. In the next video, we will explain about selecting appropriate protective equipment. Thank you for watching to the end. We hope this video will be useful for your safe work. Please subscribe to our channel and click the good button. Have a safe trip. This is what we are going to cover today. To begin, we will explain what oxygen deprivation is. Next, we will learn what environments are prone to oxygen depletion work and the risks involved. Next, safety measures and preventive actions will be explained, and lessons learned from actual accident cases and emergency procedures when a disaster occurs will be discussed. These topics will help you learn about oxygen deficiency and specific ways to maintain a safe work environment. So let's get started. First, let us explain what oxygen deficiency is. Oxygen deficiency is a health disorder that occurs in environments where the concentration of oxygen in the air is lower than normal. The air we normally breathe contains about 21% oxygen. However, when this concentration falls below 18%, the human body begins to be affected. At 16% to 12%, symptoms include headache, dizziness, shortness of breath, and difficulty concentrating. At 14% to 9%, severe fatigue, heart palpitations, nausea, ringing in the ears, and impaired judgment. And at 10% to 6%, disorientation, difficulty breathing, and coma may occur. Below 6%, loss of consciousness, respiratory arrest, and in the worst case, death may occur. These symptoms are sudden and rapid in progression and can be extremely dangerous, as the patient may lose consciousness before realizing that he or she is deprived of oxygen. Oxygen deficiency has been described as a silent killer, and by the time you realize it, it is very likely to be too late. So what locations are at high risk for oxygen depletion? Manholes and sewers consume oxygen due to decaying organic matter. In the construction industry, work is especially likely to occur in underground construction and confined spaces. In agriculture, work in brewing tanks and grain silos is more likely, as oxygen is consumed in the fermentation process. In the manufacturing industry, water storage tanks and septic tanks in enclosed spaces are prone to oxygen depletion. In the shipping industry, cargo ship holds and fuel tanks are particularly prone to oxygen consumption due to rust. Oxygen consumption due to rust is dangerous in other industries as well, and special care should be taken when working in steel tanks and the like. The common characteristics of these environments are hermetic sealing and lack of ventilation. Even a place that normally appears safe can turn into a hazardous environment under the right conditions. Did you all know? This graph shows the number of work-related accidents caused by oxygen deficiency in Japan, as well as the number of fatalities and victims. In 2023, there were 3 occupational accidents due to oxygen deficiency, 4 victims, and 4 fatalities, resulting in the loss of precious lives. Oxygen deficiency is occurring worldwide and is a problem. The most important thing to note here is that the number of victims is close to equal to the number of fatalities. Even if they are lucky enough to survive, many are left with serious disabilities. Therefore, safety measures and precautions are important to avoid oxygen deficiency. It is essential that everyone fully understand the dangers of oxygen deficiency during the pre-work meeting. Convene the people involved and clarify their roles. It is important to designate who will do what, especially the supervisor or lead person. Make sure that the lead person is someone who has completed a skills training course. Also, everyone should know the emergency response procedures. The conditions of the work site, oxygen concentration, presence of hazardous gases, etc. should be checked in advance, as well as the necessary protective equipment and measuring instruments, and who will prepare them. On the day of work, always measure oxygen levels before starting work. The most important characteristic of oxygen deficiency is that it is invisible and has no odor. This means that the human senses alone cannot detect a decrease in oxygen levels. So, when and how exactly should we measure it? First, measurements should always be taken before work begins. Then, recheck again just before entering the work area. If you are working for a long period of time, repeat the measurement periodically, for example, every hour. If there is a change in the environment, such as a change in ventilation conditions, immediately remeasure. The use of measuring instruments is also important. Use a properly calibrated oxygen analyzer and measure at the height where the work is performed. Remember to measure at the height of the worker's face as well as on the floor. It is safe to measure at several points in the space and adopt the lowest value. The safety standard is at least 18%. If less than 18%, stop work immediately, evacuate, and ventilate. If between 18% and 20%, work with ventilation and frequent remeasurements are necessary. At 21%, normal work is possible, but regular remeasurements are still essential. 21% is still possible, but periodic remeasurements are still essential. This is the measurement record form. Information to be included in the measurement record must include the date and time of the measurement, the measurement location, the name of the person taking the measurement, the type of measuring instruments used, the measurement results, and the confirmation signature of the person responsible for the work. Measurement records are not just an obligation, but an important tool to protect your safety. Please keep in mind accurate records and appropriate management, and use them to maintain a safe working environment. Remember, measuring oxygen levels before work begins is more than just a procedure. It is a critical safety check that can save your life and the lives of your coworkers. Proper measurement and good judgment based on the results are the keys to a safe work environment. I hope that each and every one of you will deeply understand the importance of this procedure and apply it to your daily work. A safe work environment is something we can all work together to create. Please share what you have learned today with your colleagues in the workplace. Next, let's learn about actual accident cases and lessons learned. The case study presented here occurred during the formwork demolition of an underground pit that serves as a motorcycle storage area for a large condominium. Let's look at the case in 5W1H for clarity. In this construction project, we were only on site when there was work to be done to dismantle the formwork. On the day of the disaster, 5 workers started work in the morning to dismantle the formwork of a pit that had been left unattended for approximately 4 months after concrete had been poured. The pit had been sealed with slab formwork to prevent rainwater from entering. Worker A broke through the plywood with an iron pipe, illuminated the pit with a floodlight, and entered. Worker B, who was outside the pit, entered the pit to hand the floodlight to Worker A. However, when Worker A did not accept it, Worker B looked inside the pit and found Worker A lying on the floor leaning against the wall. When Worker B saw this, he turned off the power supply that was preparing to pump into the other pit and asked to call other workers to rescue Worker A. Since the pit was filled with water and an electric sander was used for the work, he thought that he had received an electric shock due to an electric leak. Worker B entered the pit to rescue Worker A, but he too lost consciousness and collapsed. The 2 workers were later rescued and transferred to the hospital, but Worker A was out of work for 2 months and Worker B was out of work for 1 day. Let's take a look at how this accident occurred. The pit had been sealed for 4 months, and rainwater had accumulated in the pit, making it an oxygen deficiency hazard. After rescuing the victims, firefighters measured the oxygen concentration in the pit and found it to be 12.9%. The 2 affected workers did not measure the oxygen concentration before entering the pit for work, nor did they ventilate the pit before working in the pit and performing the rescue. The construction work was large-scale and was carried out over a fairly long period of time, and some areas, such as the underground pit where the disaster occurred, were left sealed after concrete was poured, but no one, including the original contractor, was aware that there was a risk of oxygen deficiency hazards. However, no one, including the original operator, was aware that there was a risk of oxygen depletion hazard. As a result, no measurement of oxygen concentration or ventilation was conducted prior to work in the sealed pits. So how can oxygen deficiency be prevented? Here are some important safety measures. 1. When working in a pit that has been sealed for a long period of time and where rainwater or other liquids have accumulated, measure the oxygen concentration and other parameters before starting work on that day, and thoroughly check for safety before giving work instructions. 2. When working in an oxygen deficiency hazardous area, ensure that the oxygen concentration in the work area is maintained at 18% or higher, 10 ppm or lower if hydrogen sulfide is generated. 3. Appoint a chief engineer to perform the following duties. 3. Appoint a work foreman and have him or her perform the following duties. 1. Determine the work methods and have him or her supervise the workers. 3. Appoint a work foreman to perform the following duties. 1. Determine work methods and direct workers. 2. Measure oxygen concentration before starting work again. 3. Inspect measuring instruments, ventilation equipment, air respirators, etc. And 4. Monitor the use of air respirators, etc. 5. The operator and specified primary business operator shall examine in advance whether or not there is a risk of oxygen deficiency, etc., and shall implement sufficient safety and health management with regard to preventive measures and implementation of training, etc. Finally, we will discuss what to do in the event of an oxygen deficiency event in your workplace and the emergency procedures to follow. This knowledge is important to protect your life and the lives of your coworkers, so please listen carefully. 1. Before entering a work area, make sure it is safe to do so by measuring oxygen levels and other parameters. Once you are safe, follow these steps. Move the victim to a safe location with fresh air. Once the victim has been moved, call out loudly for backup, and try to get as many people as possible to work together. Once you have called for backup, ask for an ambulance or ask for an AED to be brought to the scene. When requesting an ambulance, calmly and briefly explain the situation. If the victim is conscious and breathing, wait for an ambulance while checking for any sudden changes in the victim's condition. If the victim is not conscious or breathing, perform artificial respiration and CPR. 30 chest compressions and 2 breaths should be repeated. If backup personnel are present, take measures to keep hazardous areas off limits to prevent secondary injuries. Oxygen deficiency is a time-sensitive situation. It is important to remain calm and act quickly. Let's look back at some of the important points we learned today. We explained what oxygen deficiency is and where it is most likely to occur. Next, you understood that the risk of being affected is very high, as well as the countermeasures and prevention. Finally, actual cases of accidents were explained and emergency response procedures were explained. Those who wish to learn more about oxygen deficiency diseases should take advantage of the safety and health workshops. In the next video, we will explain about selecting appropriate protective equipment. Thank you for watching to the end. We hope this video will be useful for your safe work. Please subscribe to our channel and click the good button. Have a safe trip.